the real number of people out of work. The unemployment rate was released at 7.1% on Thursday. But I've got new figures tonight from New South Wales Treasury that shows the actual number of people out of work is likely to be far, far higher. And here's why. The unemployment rate is worked out from the number of people who are looking for work and don't have a job. But if you look at the actual participation rate, how much of the adult population are working but are not looking for a job, that tells a much more terrifying story. The unemployment rate in New South Wales released on Thursday was 6.4%. But when you look at the participation rate, the number of people who could work but have given up looking, it's greater, a whole percentage point greater. New South Wales Treasury say that while it's not a direct correlation, if that number of people were actually added to the unemployment rate, it would be a full percentage point higher at 7.4%. And they say it would be a very similar story across other states. Joining me a short time ago to speak about this was the New South Wales Treasurer Dominic Perrottet. Thank you so much for your time, Treasurer.
Pleasure.
Look, I want to start with these real unemployment figures, the true number of people who are out of work, the participation figures. What does it tell you about how many people are actually without a job in New South Wales?
Well, Sharri, I think if you look at the unemployment rate and the numbers that went up just recently, New South Wales is the lowest unemployment rate with Tasmania at 6.4%. But as you say, the participation rate has also declined from a high of over 66% here in our state just over a year ago. So I think that can kind of mask the fact that just in last month alone, we lost over 40,000 jobs here in our state. We lost over 220,000 jobs the month before. And a lot of these people in full-time work are not looking for work. So as a result, they don't add to the unemployment rate. So that's why I think whether it's New South Wales or other states and territories around the country obviously find these figures concerning. And we're doing everything that we can right now to put as many businesses back into business and keep as many people in work during this time.
And so why do you think people have given up looking for a job?
Well, I think if you look at the participation rate in our state compared to the others, Victoria lost a lot more jobs in the part-time sector. So I think a lot of people here in our state, obviously in areas like tourism and education that have been probably more substantially affected by the pandemic, may have made the decision at this point in time to not be looking for work. So that obviously affects the unemployment numbers. But what's most important is that we open up as much of our economy as quickly as possible, living alongside this virus, so we can get as many people into work as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, these are quite significant figures, aren't they? When, if in New South Wales you have a full percentage point higher, so the true number of people who are out of work and aren't earning money is actually 7.4%.
Yeah, and that's true. If you're taking that participation rate, and that's obviously a concern for us. And we were asked during the week that the unemployment numbers weren't as bad as previously some people may have thought, but behind every one of those numbers is a person, a family trying to get ahead and put food on the table and provide. And that's why we need to do everything that we can to get as many people back in work. This is going to be a difficult time. We updated our economic forecasts in the New South Wales Parliament last week, and that means we've had to make some difficult decisions in our state. There's going to be some difficult decisions going forward, but we're doing everything we can, investing record amounts, over $13 billion in support measures, really increasing our infrastructure investment because construction is the area that is a concern for us going forward, not the public pipeline, but the private pipeline. So we need to make sure that our policies are targeted towards keeping people in work, reducing red tape, reducing regulation and improving the planning system so we get things moving.
Yeah. Look, speaking to companies anecdotally, many are planning quite major redundancies towards the end of the year, which is not obviously included in these figures. Is this what you're hearing as well when you speak to CEOs? And how worried are you about just how bad it's going to get towards the end of 2020?
Well, Sharri, the biggest challenge for us is to make sure that when that JobKeeper program runs out at the end of September, that we transition as many people who are on that program into paid work. And there are a number of industries that I think are particularly at risk in our state with the professional services, construction. As I said earlier, we really need to make sure that a private construction pipeline is maintained. And people might not see that because it may be masked by the amount of cranes over Sydney. But it's really been our public demand, our public investment here in our state that's kept that public pipeline
But are
going.
you hearing this as well from companies that towards the end of the year they are going to have to be more job losses?
I think there's a concern with across many industries that they want to make sure that as many people who are working for them who are on that JobKeeper program are able to be maintained in their business. And it's still early days. We're moving pretty quickly through this. And that's why what we've been doing in our state is making sure that we open up as much of the economy as possible, as safely as possible. We don't want to be going backwards here. We're opening up capacity in the public transport system so people can get to work. So there's a lot that we're focused on, and the thing that we can do that's going to really help businesses across the state is allow them to function. And that means we're going to look at a whole range of other areas of red tape and regulation that's going to help them be able to function in a post-COVID era.
Look, you mentioned your concern about when JobKeeper ends. Have you asked the federal government, have you asked the federal Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, to consider an extension of JobKeeper?
Well, all treasurers during our discussions through the old COAG process, our KIFA process, that's obviously a natural point of conversation. And we've just targeted some of our recent grants. We were offering $10,000 grants to small businesses. We've changed that so that we provide extra support for those businesses that have been substantially affected. And as I said,
but what are you asking of the federal government to consider?
Well, what we've been making sure, Sharri, is that the programs that we're investing in New South Wales are complementary to the federal government. At the end of the day, that's a policy area for them. We understand the parameters around that, and that's why we've been focused on having as much of the New South Wales economy operating by the end of September so that we can transition that program across. Continuing that support in perpetuity is not going to work.
But there are certain sectors that you're discussing with them that you'd like to extend?
Well, I think these issues naturally get raised, but I think as we move through this, the businesses that were affected earlier on are slowly getting back to where they were beforehand. But there are some industries that we know are going to continue to find it hard. Education, particularly tourism, these areas in our state have been substantially affected. And in circumstances where there's not a vaccine, in circumstances where the virus is not eradicated, it may take some time for these businesses to get back and running. So we're happy to work through with the Commonwealth on those areas, as we have in the past, whether it's come to childcare and preschools, councils who have missed out on the JobKeeper program. We've always wanted to fill the gaps where they've occurred, but we have the same goal at heart, and that's to get as many people back into work as quickly as possible and have as many of these businesses functioning the way they were pre-pandemic.
Look, Victoria has scrapped its easing of restrictions. It's had a spike of cases, 25 new cases over the past 24 hours. Do you think that this new outbreak is linked to the protests that we saw over the past 2 weeks?
Well, I have no information that was the case, but we have seen those protests before. I think the ones in Melbourne were linked to that, and that was incredibly disappointing because, from my perspective, people right across our state, our law-abiding citizens, are making enormous sacrifices to keep people safe, and that means businesses have taken a substantial hit. That means many families have had to change their lifestyles, and whether it's funerals and weddings and things like that, everybody, as we say, is all in it together, and people have made enormous sacrifices to get this virus under control. We've invested significant amounts in our health system, and I think if you compare us globally in terms of what we've been able to achieve in every jurisdiction in this nation when it comes to building up our ICU capacity, has really allowed us now to open up the economy. So that still relies, though, on people doing the right thing. And what we shouldn't have is are people, congregating in significant numbers, substantive numbers, that can jeopardise all the good work that people right around this country have put in.
Yeah. Now, look, the Prime Minister revealed a couple of days ago that the New South Wales government had been the subject of a cyber attack. Firstly, what can you tell me about the nature of this attack, and why did the New South Wales government decide to keep it secret?
Oh, well, it's not unusual for all governments and our government as well to have these issues in relation to cybersecurity. 2 years ago, we released our cybersecurity strategy going forward, where we've already invested millions of dollars in that. We announced just this week a $1.6 billion digital infrastructure plan, of which $240 million was a commitment to doing some further work in cybersecurity.
But on this particular attack, what can you tell us about it?
Well, the Prime Minister's made statements in relation to the fact that it was instigated from a state, and what's most important to us as governments, just like the private sector, as we move to more of a digital economy, we need to make sure that we're ready for these issues to occur into the future. And whether it's the private sector, as I said, or governments that hold public information, we need to make sure we're investing to keep data and our online security safe.
Was it China?
Look, I'm not at liberty to go into those details, Sharri. What's most important is that these attacks aren't one-off issues. They occur regularly, and all governments right across the country and around the world are investing amounts to make sure that our cybersecurity is the best that it can be, that we protect the private data, so the public data of people in our state, and that's going to be a challenge going forward as we move to a more of an online and digital government and digital economy. These issues aren't going to go away, and I think what you'll see is a lot more investment in that space.
In terms of just this most recent attack, and then I'll move on and finish up, how serious was the breach, and did it involve any stealing or hacking of the data of personal citizens?
Oh, look, Sharri, I'm not at liberty to go into those details. What I can say is that the government takes these threats very seriously, and we've put together a couple of years ago a very strong cybersecurity strategy. We work with other jurisdictions and share information. It's really important, as we'll continue to work with the Commonwealth Government in relation to these matters, because, as I said, whether it's a government or the private sector, we all take matters of online security very seriously, particularly when it comes to public data.
Yeah, just finally, branch sacking has been a major issue in the Labor Party, both state and federally, over the past week. But how worried are you about the same pattern, branch sacking, in certain factions of the Liberal Party?
Well, all political parties, Sharri, have their issues in this space, and they have since the beginning of time. My issue with, which has been raised this week with the New South Wales Labor Party, is that they sat on a report that they commissioned for months and only released it once it was leaked to the papers. You had Chris Bowen.
But the New South Wales Liberal Party has been doing the exact same thing. They've sat on a report alleging branch stacking at the Baulkham Hills branch for 18 months now.
Well, when a political party commissions a report that has a public interest in it, which is what we've seen with the Labor Party this week, and they decide to sit on it, which they have actually commissioned themselves, and it doesn't see the light of day, I think that's concerning. And we had Chris Bowen this morning say, well, that's only Victoria was different to New South Wales because the Victorian branch was caught on TV.
Would you like to see the Liberal Party dealing with this issue then, that it hasn't dealt with for 18 months? And these are quite serious allegations of branch sacking and even falsifying and doctoring of minutes in the Baulkham Hills branch.
Well, I have complete confidence in the New South Wales Liberal Party in dealing with these matters efficiently and effectively. That's what we do. And as Treasurer or the Premier of the state, if when she's asked, we make sure that as much as possible, the professional matters of the party are dealt with in a way that drives public confidence. But what you saw from the Labor Party this week in New South Wales, I thought was incredibly poor. When you had Dan Andrews get up in New South Wales, in Victoria, and deal with every single one of the questions in the press conference, deal with those matters swiftly and appoint administrators, whereas here in New South Wales we see once again a history that's plaguing that party of covering up these reviews. And I think that undermines public confidence in political parties and ultimately in democracy.